User attributes and criteria both describe great solutions. If we understand the differences and get them right, it's 5-star reviews all day long. In the design process, we describe a great solution in a few different places. Then we use those descriptions to compare ideas and make decisions. If we get those descriptions wrong, we make bad decisions. And because all of our decisions are made on behalf of our users don't get what they want and need. Today, we'll see where user attributes and criteria are used in the design process. Then look at similarities and differences, and go through 2 examples, one you know well and one you probably don't have personal experience with. A quick question to start. My last episode was on user attributes, episode 6, so this is based on that one. Which of these does not describe user attributes? You can pause it if you want to think it through. Okay, the answer is B. With user attributes, we do want to use the words that our user speaks rather than our own words. We use more adjectives and adverbs, and we are clear about whether the user wants more or less of something, so it's obvious. If we just say size, we don't know if we want it to be large or small. And we do want them to be independent of each other, so we aren't double counting something. The thing we don't want to do is to imply one solution. User attributes should describe all possible great solutions. If you haven't seen it yet, you can check it out, episode 6 on user attributes. At the beginning of the design process, this is especially important. We need to delay any thought of particular solutions until we really understand our user and their problem. This is very difficult to do. We are problem-solving machines. And as soon as we get the hint of a problem, we want to solve it immediately. But in design, we really have to push that back to brainstorming. You almost have to put a wall up in your mind that keeps solutions out of the early stages of design. Maybe jot them down so you don't forget them, but focus on the problem first. In the early stages, we do this with empathy, and we use a tool called quality function deployment. We listen to users and we record their voices, so we're not just designing something for ourselves. The user attributes are just that left column in the QFD table. But later in the design process, we really do have to create solutions and make decisions. That's where criteria come in. At the beginning of brainstorming, we describe a great solution with criteria. Again, it's the leftmost column in the table. Then we brainstorm and use the criteria to help us decide which is the best solution. The criteria help us make the difficult trade-offs between solutions. There are always trade-offs. So, these are the similarities. They both describe great solutions, and we use them to compare ideas and make decisions. They are both what our users want, preferably in their own words. They both use the same phrasing and grammar, and we want them both to be unambiguous and independent of each other. I want to introduce 3 words: problem, function, and solution. These are just big categories that help us talk about different parts of the design process. The first is problem. This is simply the problem the user needs solved, the problem you have chosen to solve. The example is, I have no way to record my ideas on paper when I'm out away from home. It is important to state the problem without a specific solution. The user might say, I need a pencil. But as a designer, you need to take the specific solution out of the problem. The problem here is guiding us a bit. If the person is out and about, they can't use a laser printer. But understanding when and how the person will be using the solution is important. You want to be guided towards solutions that will work and away from solutions that won't work. The second is function. This is the job done by your solution to the problem. It isn't the solution, it's the function of the solution. Episode 5 digs into how you phrase a function, but we always phrase them as verb, noun, prepositional phrase. Again, the function doesn't dictate the solution. Many solutions are possible with this function as stated. And we can break the overall function down into a number of sub-functions. It's usually helpful to break a function down into small pieces because the small pieces are easier to solve. Then you can build them back up into the overall function. And third is the solution. Now we have the specific solution you designed or chose that performs the function and solves the problem. In this case, the overall solution is a wooden pencil. Each of the subfunctions is solved by a specific set of features on the pencil. Making the marks is solved by the sharp graphite point and the wood that supports it. The hexagonal body of the pencil transmits the force to the tip of the pencil. And the eraser assembly removes the unwanted marks. This particular eraser is extendable and replaceable when it wears out. Now, the differences between user attributes versus criteria. They both describe a great solution, but when we're talking about user attributes, we're usually talking about the overall solution. And when we're talking about criteria, we're talking about the sub-solutions. User attributes go in the quality function deployment table, which is early in the process. But they also show up later in brainstorming when we're deciding between overall solutions. Criteria show up in the weighted distribution matrix tables, which are later in the process during brainstorming. This is our example. The overall function here is to record ideas on paper. The list of user attributes here describes a great solution to that function. Remember that I'm showing it backwards here. We usually come up with the user attributes and criteria before we come up with the solution. We want the solution to produce something that is easy to read, which probably comes down to contrast and line thickness. We want it to be permanent and not smudge. And the device should last a long time and be easy to use. If you have some more or some questions, please put them in the comments. These are overall descriptions, so the list can get fairly long. Now we move over to the subfunction of just removing the unwanted marks. I'm being careful not to say erase because it is so tied up with the word eraser, which is a solution. The criteria list is shorter because it focuses on one small part of the function. Sometimes criteria are the same, like long life and easy to use. Sometimes they're different or talking about different things. Overall, we want permanent marks that aren't going to disappear over time. But when we're talking about removing those marks, we actually want them to disappear as much as possible so that we can add new marks. The idea is that the criteria really zero in on the specifics of that one small subfunction. Once you dig down that far, you'll find criteria that only apply to that subfunction. Now we'll do some design. This is an example you probably don't have user experience with. Quite likely you haven't been to space yet, but neither have most spacesuit designers. Maybe none of them have been to space. But they still have to design a spacesuit that will work in space every single time. We're looking at the overall function of a spacesuit and the subfunction that's just being able to look out of the spacesuit. We'll brainstorm for both. Here's the list of things to keep in mind on the far left, and the overall function in as few words as possible. Safeguard worker in space. I could have said house or protect, but safeguard seems like a good word. I also could have said human, but worker is a lot more descriptive of what the human is there to do. Now is your turn to do some brainstorming. What is the description of a great solution? Pause the video now if you want to brainstorm user attributes on your own. Here are a few of them. Easy to move, comfortable, low leakage, and good atmospheric control. Good is kind of a lame word. Maybe accurate would be better, as you want the spacesuit to keep the atmospheric parameters of heat, oxygen, and humidity within tight ranges. Drop some more in the comments if you want feedback on phrasing or applicability. And the subfunction is permit light into eyes. Maybe there's a better word for permit. Transmit could work, but that sounds like it is actively doing something. Again, pause the video if you want to brainstorm criteria on your own. And here are the criteria for this subfunction. A great solution should be easy to see through with low distortion and glare, and it has to be strong. There is definitely a trade-off between strong and low distortion. The thicker it is, the stronger it is, but that will give it higher distortion. These visors are actually about 5 millimeters thick, less than 1/4 of an inch. These trade-offs are a big reason for creating criteria. Let's wrap it up. User attributes focus on the entire design, while criteria focus on a small part of the design. User attributes are used both early and later in the design process, while criteria are used later during brainstorming. They both describe great solutions and point us in the right direction for brainstorming. And once we've created a lot of solutions, they help us compare these solutions and make the right decisions for our users. Please subscribe if you would like to learn more about the design process. And if you'd like to start turning your ideas into products, please check out the Heroic Design Workbook. The link is in the notes below. Thank you for your time and attention.